Hey, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. I'm Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and thank you very much for listening in. Love the company as always. Hope you've all been well. Hope your bonsais are growing like crazy in this late part of our spring period, and that the things are looking good for you. Should be nice and lush. Should be nice and full, and it's a lovely time to have bonsai. I really love this time. I think it makes me smile most days when I get out there and see something new sprouting away. Gives you a lot of work to do, but it's still a very pleasant time to be involved with bonsai and trees in general. Anyway, I thought with this episode of the podcast, being episode 43 for 2024, I'd have a chat about some travel I've done lately. I'm over in Western Australia, and I've done a bucket load of workshops, demonstrations, worked on so many trees, seen so many people, met so many people, seen so many people come back over and over again, and I've just really loved my time over in the West. And I thought this podcast would be dedicated to what I've learned, what I've come across, what I've seen, what I've experienced, what I've loved, how I've grown, I suppose, in my bonsai travels, my bonsai journey, for what I've seen and been involved with over here, and just to share a little bit of the love that's been shared with me. So should be an interesting podcast. I'll promise I'll make sure that that there's lots of content for you to enjoy, and we'll get into it. Been to Western Australia. I don't mean to sound like a tourism bureau announcement, but seriously, you have to. It's amazing. This part of the world, especially the southwest corner, seems to be tree god country. Driving around, I can't tell you how many times I've said, "Oh, look at that tree! Look how it's designed! Look at how it's been affected. It's hit its maximum height. It's got such a beautiful trunk. It's got lovely flowers. Or look at the twisty bark on that one. It's so lush and dense with its foliage, but it's got such light structure. It's like, seriously, such an amazing place." So we started off with Albany, went through Mandurah, Perth, and finished up the trip in Bunbury. So I think it's given us a really good feel for the different areas. A lot of local native species here, which is insane. It's so dense with Australian native trees that are particular to this area that it really is. It's got something special about it. The weather patterns, the climate, things change so much. I know it's such a bloody big place, Western Australia, and there's a lot of distance between them, but really, you look at it on a map and it doesn't look like it's that far, but certain species grow very well in certain areas, and they're so dense in that area, but they don't seem to migrate further than that. They do a little bit, of course, but don't seem to spread far and wide. Like, they're really peculiar to that specific area. And one of the trees that they have over here that I absolutely love is the Melaleuca cuticularis, the saltwater paperbark. It's a magnificent species. It's got beautiful, papery white bark, very small, lush green foliage, and from a styling perspective, it can be something very light and elegant, literati style. It can be an up and out styling. It can be down with its branches angled. And every single time I design one of these trees, there's no consistent design that works with these things. They all work, and it's amazing. And when you drive around through the countryside, or you go for a walk through the bush, you can see in one area, like they grow obviously salt water. They grow around water. They love water. So if you go for a walk around a lake down in the south and you find them, you see all different style of these things within about a metre of each other. So it's not that one is more common a design, or one is a more preferred design for the species. It's anything can work. So it's really up to the artist as to what they see and what they'd like to interpret the design as. And I can tell you, I've been involved with all of them. In Albany, we worked on a heap of these things. This is where they really seem to thrive and come from, and they're they've got their collecting down pat down there, collecting these species, legally through getting permits and access to property and that sort of thing. So they've got this thing covered off where they can get the trees and style them however they want. And if their preference is to go for literati style, cool. If they want to go for a wind affected, not windswept, wind affected styling, then they can. If one of my mates over, he's got a beautiful little one that's an up and out style. It's very, very natural, and it's one of the most amazing trees and got the most incredible structure. And the thing sits 30, 40 centimeters tall. Like it's a small tree in comparison to what I've seen of these things, because they can get up over meter 20 in height and still look incredible. I was really fortunate last time I came over here, when I was over for our national convention. That was when I was first introduced to this species, and I got to demonstrate and create one of these trees as part of the demonstration that I was doing. And this trip, which is a year and a half later, I got to see that same tree again, and it was it's like coming back to an old friend. It's so nice to see how it's progressed and how branches have set and things have started to thicken and develop, and it's still got more refinement to do, but it's nice to work on trees and then come back across them again. So I think that from my perspective, one of the things I'm going to take home from this is the diversity and beauty of the local Australian native species from this area. And I've seen a lot where they started not just from collected material, but also started from tube stock, and they grow so fast. They grow ridiculously fast. I think that, I've said it before, if you work with local native species from your area, it might not be something that you want to necessarily work with because you see them every day, in parks, in fields, around when you're going for a walk in nature. Might be street trees, but if they grow well, if they develop quickly in your environment, then that's the species really you should be targeting. There's one. There's a Raphilia melaleuca, another paperbark that is native to Western Australia. Back home on the other side of the country, I just don't seem to manage them quite as the same as what they do over here. Their climate's different to what we've got. But I've seen them where these, I've seen photos of these stumps that come out of the ground just over 12 months ago, and you look at them and they literally are a block of wood, and with very little roots. And so within 12 months, I couldn't believe it, that I was working just the other day on styling one of these things, and it's got proper developed branches. It's got not only primary branches but secondary branches, which had been pre-wired to me seeing them. The wounds look like they've healed, and the paper bark has started to roll over and looking really, really mature. It had been potted up. It was popping buds from everywhere. And when I asked the question, I said, how long ago was this collected? And the answer was just over 12 months. So 12, and I saw photos. So just over 12 months from a stump to something which is well on the way to being a magnificent tree. And that was repeated not just for one tree, but over and over and over. And so I suppose what I'm alluding to is what I've learnt most from being here is, I learnt it when I went to Cairns. I learned it I see it time and time again wherever I go, that you really need to have your eyes and ears open to what locals do best with their local species. I'm going when I get home to my trees, to these particular melaleucas, I'm going to embrace what's been done over here, how they manage some pest issues with them, how they water them, how they look after them over summer, their repotting frequency, all that stuff. That now becomes part of my kit to see if I'm not arrogant enough to think that, hey, I know everything and I'm the best at it, and listen to me and do what I say. No way. I honestly put my hand up and say, please tell me, how do you manage your trees when they are brilliant like this? How do you do it? And it was consistent. The good growers that I came across, the ones with beautiful trees, I wouldn't lead it by saying, okay, do you do this? Do you do that? It's like, well, just tell me. And the story came back time and time again, how they manage their trees, how they look after them, how they, the watering, the feeding regime, the pruning, the repotting. It was like, okay, so there's a pattern here I can see. And this is where I encourage everybody, with the advice that you get given anywhere, bonsai clubs, whatever it is, you look at the trees from the people giving you the advice. If you like what you see, then that's when you start to implement and take on board what's being told to you. Because more often than not, well, almost all the time, good growers, good bonsai developers, good practitioners, they're more than enthusiastic to pass on their information. Of course, there'll be instances where they don't want to, and that's fine. But more often, in my experience, people love to share their knowledge. They love it. All you have to do is ask. Sometimes they might be a bit reserved about it because, they might get shot down for what they do, being slightly different to someone else. But I can tell you that I've found really great consistency amongst so many different people from all the different places we've been to, Albany, Mandurah, Perth, Bunbury, all the different places that I've been to. The good growers with really good trees seem to be very consistent how they're doing it. So, and there's something to that, you have to be able to accept and take on knowledge from people, and also be humble enough to say, maybe you're not doing it right. And I 100% put my hand up saying, I wish my trees would develop as quickly as yours. I wish they looked like yours. I never look at someone's trees, no matter who they are or what type of tree it is, and say, you know what you should be doing? You should be doing this. I will always, as part of what I do, try and help as much as I can and say, look, this is what I do with my trees and this is the example of them, and try and build people's confidence. And I think that's something that I try and pass on, not forcing people to accept or to change, but maybe just to consider. And with the workshops that I've been involved with lately, seeing people that came back time and time again, that was one of the really cool parts about it. That first time I see them in a workshop, maybe they're a bit reserved, a bit quiet, not really talking up about what they do. Maybe they're, workshops can be intimidating, especially the first one. It's tough. It's really hard, I know from experience, but you tear that Band-Aid off, you get into it, the next one gets a bit easier. And by the third time seeing these people, they were really confident, walking in with something and going, okay, so this is what I would like to do. This is what I see, rather than going, here you go, what do I do? It's sort of like, okay, you've got the confidence now. You've built that up. And, I always think that with education and confidence comes results. So if you can learn, if you can take on board the information that's being provided to you by someone, and you've got the confidence to take steps forward with things because you've got that experience now where you've seen how trees can change and what they can do, and suddenly you're like, oh wow, this opens up your whole world. And with that, so confidence and education comes results. And that's like I said, I see it everywhere I go. And every time I'm more than open to learning the way that locals do it, because there's slight variations that I think I can definitely learn from, but probably all of us can too. All right, so Western Australia has pretty strict quarantine laws, which means a lot of species we can get elsewhere around Australia, they have to be grown locally or propagated locally. They cannot bring trees into, what's very difficult, almost impossible as far as I know, to get trees into Western Australia. So it means that they've got to work with what they've got to work with. There's some very old stock that I've seen, around the place, and a lot of people are doing great things. And back when they could bring in seeds and that sort of thing of exotics, they did long time ago. And I saw a lot of trees that were 30 plus years old that have been grown from seed that have developed very nicely. For instance, beautiful black pines that sat about 30, 40 centimetres tall that had bases that would be 25 centimetres, I suppose, and then vary across. So just beautiful, magnificent taper, really developed nicely. So they work very hard with what they've got available to them, and they don't have the availability of a dozen odd bonsai nurseries that they can plough through to get the stock. There's a lot of native stuff over here, but there's a hell of a lot of exotic species as well, and they really work hard with what they've got. You've got lots of growers over here that are doing things for the future, which I found really promising and encouraging. Growing stock as bonsai for the future. There's people that are doing lots of grafting, taking what they've got or what they've had and grafting species quite significantly. There's lots of developers of things over here. There's lots of collectors that go out and dig stock. That seems to be a massive thing over here. And there's an enormous common desire, from what I saw, for people to have really high quality bonsai. And I cannot tell you how many times I heard people talking, saying, that's okay, I'll work off this bud. That bud, I'll cut that off because the structure's too thick, too coarse, too long. I'll work with this bud here. And I'd be looking at going, okay, so do you want to just keep that there to keep your silhouette full, in the meantime? And they're like, no, let's start it again, because this thing will develop really quickly. It'll grow so fast. It'll do this, it'll do that. And in 12 months, 2 years, I won't even have lost it. So I found that there's a lot of, I'd normally call it brave, but I think it's more local people, or that they know their trees so well that they can accept that cutting something off now is good structure, is good bonsai. That whole approach, that whole philosophy to managing your trees really seems to be flourishing over here. And it was across the board that I saw that. And I think that I would say the people with the higher quality trees were more inclined to do it, because they've got that experience and they know that how these things are going to grow and they know how it's going to develop. So they don't need to fluff around with things. They can just get on with it straight away. And branch cutters were flying left, right, and centre with stock to keep things moving in the right direction, which was awesome from my perspective. And another thing that I came across, so I had to do workshops and then presentations. Presentation at the club, and one thing that I found really interesting was when I get the chance to sit back and listen and not engage. So I've done my bit. It's time, for me to stop taking up valuable oxygen and talking and let other people have their say. And one thing that I love to do is, when I'm in an environment like that, is just to shut up and listen. And listen to how people engage and interact, and just see what's happening after the fluff of what I've said settles. And one thing I'm really impressed with was the sharing of information. People more than happy to get involved and provide a bit of support and encouragement, and to guide people as much as they could, and encourage them and talk about the future and their experiences. So it was actually good, because I'd say something and this is what I think, and this is how we should progress, or this is how this is going to develop. And then someone, after I've left the conversation, would come around and go, you know what, that's right, because I did this and that happened, and look at this and look at that. And it was like, oh, that's so cool, because I think that your local networks, your bonsai network that I've talked about, is so important, far more important than someone like me flying in for a month and then leaving. You can gather as much information as you like from someone who's visiting, and trying to help as much as possible, but you really need that local support to take your bonsai to the next level and to take you to the next level. You definitely harness as much information as you possibly can, but you've got to engage and use it locally. I passed on so much information. I honestly did everything. I was an open book, which was lovely. I think it's one of the things that I really get a kick out of, and I see that that without getting too deep about it, I suppose, is part of my purpose, for want of a better word, is to pass on as much as I can, to make people love bonsai as much as they possibly can. That's my core. Inspire, inform, involve. That's been at the heart of what I've done from day one with Bonsai Matsu, and part of this podcast as well, is to put so much time and effort into making it that everybody, no matter where you are, north of Portugal, lowest, most southern part of New Zealand, in Melbourne, around the corner from my home, wherever you are, that you enjoy bonsai as much as you possibly can, because you're going to achieve the best results you possibly can and avoid mistakes, avoid issues with your trees as much as is possible. And I try and help. And I think about that when I first get someone who's fresh to bonsai, someone who's about to start their journey, or they've just started, or maybe they've started a long time ago, but they haven't gone deep into it, or they're just sort of scratching the surface. I think that if I can start a bonsai ripple that turns into a tsunami for these people, then I've done my job. Because, as we all know, if you're listening to this podcast and you're into season 6, then you must love your bonsai as much as what I do. And once you start to get that reciprocation from your trees, once you start to get that love back from your trees, and you get so much more out of it in so many ways, for so many different reasons, so much of that mental headspace repair work that trees can do for us, then you know that this is not a hobby, it's a lifestyle. It's something that we work around. And I can tell you, having been away from my own trees for such a long period of time, I've got this yearning to get back to my collection and spend time with them again. I've just had the hair stand up on my arms talking about it, because it's something that I've never been away this long from my trees. I've got some great people, great family, and other great people helping me with the trees, so I'm really confident that everything's okay. Systems are great, everything's working, there's been no failures, thank God, and cameras are working, so I can check everything from a distance. But it's not the same, touching green and being up close and having a bit of a conversation with them, making sure that everything's okay, that everything's on track, and that they're thriving and doing the best they possibly can because of what I'm doing with them. Well, that's something you need to be nice and close. But anyway, I do miss my trees. I'm looking forward to getting back to them in a short period of time. But that's where we are. And being across the other side of the country, 5,000 k's from home, it's beautiful to see that people have got the same passion, that same desire for trees, that bonsai love that just seems to be universal amongst us nutbags that love these little trees in pots. It's pretty cool. So anyway, Western Australia is a bloody big place. You look at things on a map and you go, yeah, I can do this from here to here. That's easy. That's no worries. And suddenly you look at it and okay, that's about 8 hours drive, flat out at 100 k's an hour. You're never going to get there very quickly. But for such a big place, I found that people have travelled far and wide to come and have a listen to what I've got to say and be part of this bonsai love, and it's been incredible. So I do well and truly love my time in Western Australia, and I can't wait to get back. if you've listened to this podcast, you would have heard me talk about your bonsai network, which is your bonsai mates. And it's one of the best things about bonsai, I think, is the sharing of the passion and the camaraderie. And seeing it is alive and well in Western Australia has been, it's been great. It really has. It's going to be a sad place to leave because there is such a passion for bonsai here that I've seen, that it's infectious, and it's been awesome. I've had complete strangers open up their homes to me, hosting me and looking after me, and all they've done it all for the betterment of bonsai in their local area. So it's been brilliant. I'm really touched by it. Hopefully you can hear that, because I've felt very welcome, very special, very much loved, which is great. It's really nice to know that that what I'm about with bonsai, with the trees and the people and the passion, that it reaches far and wide. It's humbling, to be honest. And also I got to experience the other day the most amazing pasta, homemade pasta, that has changed me forever. So that was delicious, and I'm definitely looking forward to hopefully getting a second plate next time I come back to Western Australia. Other things I've loved about this joint is the Quokkas. I reckon they are on Rottnest Island. They are an amazing creature. But it's funny, you go from seeing these things going, oh, you're cute at the start of the day, and oh, look, there's another one, to, sort of 8, 9, 10 hours later, like, oh, get the hell away from me. Yeah, anyway, if you don't know what quokka is, look it up. And if you ever get to Australia, if you're outside Australia, you should make a trip over to Rottnest Island. It's a very, very special place. One thing I haven't liked about Western Australia, though, is the bloody snakes. I've seen more snakes over here walking through national parks than I have in my entire life. Nearly stood on 3 of them, and some of them have been quite large and nasty, and tiger snakes. So anyway, thank you, Western Australia. I do love the everything that you've provided to me, and in fact, I've got a few trees to bring home to add to my collection, and they are going to be magnificent. I'm so excited. Travelling with them, it's like having little babies that I take out of the camper van and I'll put out in the sunshine, give them water, and then when we move to the next place, put them back in the camper van, travel on, then get to the next place, take them out, give them some more water, put them in the sunshine. So anyway, I've got a little piece of Western Australia in my heart, and also in my bonsai collection now that I can take back. So thanks for listening. Next week, or next episode of the podcast, I'm going to talk about podcasting on the road, which you may listen to this podcast and say, that sounds a little bit different. I'll tell you all about that next week. I'm also going to talk about treating fungal issues. So it's something that's going to be coming for us. Anywhere that's got a bit of humidity in the air at this time of the year is something that we need to get on top of. So stick around for that. Thanks for the company. Thanks for the support. I love you subscribers. If you feel like subscribing to the podcast, please do. Check out the show notes for the link, because it means a hell of a lot. Until next time, happy bonsai.